respected all over the world again, respected like we haven't been respected in many, many years. You look at Iran and you look at so many of the things that are happening. Iran wants to talk. They all want to talk.
Well, that's President Trump expressing confidence that Iran wants to try to strike a deal with the U.S. on its nuclear program. But you know, the president is shrugging off speculation of a potential meeting without preconditions that he could have with Iranian President Hassan Rouhani when both attend the upcoming United Nations General Assembly session here in New York in about 2 weeks. This all comes after Tehran last week said it was using advanced centrifuges that are prohibited by the 2050 nuclear deal. And of course, this all comes amid the breaking news this weekend about those Iranian-backed Houthi rebels attacking Saudi Arabia oil fields. So what comes next? Retired U.S. Air Force General Robert Spalding joins us, former senior director for the strategic planning at the National Security Council, senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, and author of the book Stealth War: How China Took Over While America's Elite Slept. General Spalding, welcome to Fox News Channel. Thank you for your service to our great country. First, let's start with Iran. What do you think the chances are that the president could meet with Rouhani when they say, yeah, I'll meet with you if you lift all the sanctions?
Well, I think, first of all, that's an ingoing negotiation tactic on the behalf of Iran. You know, the president has at his disposal, in addition to military capability, he has diplomatic, he has informational, he has economic. And I think what he's trying to do is establish, you know, using all elements of national power, can we come to some kind of agreement that is better than what we had with JCPOA? If you remember, it allowed, after 10 years, the Iranians to continue pursuing a nuclear weapon. And quite frankly, it gave them billions of dollars to continue this bad behavior that is, you know, led to what this attack on the Saudi oil fields.
Well, clearly, Iran, they've been lashing out. Look, they've been attacking the oil tankers, having the drones, now directly attacking their nemesis and rival, Saudi Arabia. Here's what the president said about the potential of having some talks, because Iran certainly has been squeezed. They've been feeling the results of the president's policies in terms of those sanctions. Here's what he said.
And I do believe they'd like to make a deal. If they do, that's great. And if they don't, that's great, too. But they have tremendous financial difficulty, and the sanctions are getting tougher and tougher. We cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon, and they never will have a nuclear weapon. And if they're thinking about enrichment, they can forget about it, because it's going to be very dangerous for them to enrich.
So do you see all these attacks as a clear example that the president's policies are working, that they're feeling the heat?
They are, and if you go back to the potential dialogue with the Taliban, they exhibited some of the same behavior, which is really creating attacks right prior to having dialogues in a way to increase the leverage they had over the president. Of course, the president's not going to take it. He's going to continue to up the pressure on them. I think what you'll see going forward is also pressure on the Chinese, quite frankly, Chinese banks, Chinese companies for supporting Iran in their behavior. The Russians also support them. So I think it's going to be a full court press going forward, and the Iranians aren't going to be able to get the president off, you know, his focus of getting them not to have a nuclear weapon and not to be a disruptive factor in the Middle East.
When do you think they'll cry uncle?
Well, it's really hard for a totalitarian regime to get them to cry uncle, because what they can do is take the squeeze that you're putting on their country and put the squeeze on their population, which is what they're really good at. So these problems last for decades. You look at Cuba, you look at North Korea. We don't have a timeline on this that is in days or months. It could be in years, it could be in decades. The problem is, you know, Chinese ability to offer money to the Iranians to then allow them to go into the Middle East and create this kind of problem. So as long as they're able to get money from China to actually create these kinds of catastrophes in the Middle East, we're going to have a continued problem. So it's really about isolating their ability to have access to Western capital, isolating their ability to have access to arms. That's going to really result in, you know, decreasing the amount of chaos that's going on in the region.
And talk about chaos, they're brazenly ratcheting up that chaos with these drone attacks against the Saudi Arabian oil fields. Let me read you what Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has tweeted out. He is blaming Tehran directly, saying, quote, Tehran is behind nearly 100 attacks on Saudi Arabia while Rouhani and Zarif pretend to engage in diplomacy. Amid other calls for de-escalation, Iran has now launched an unprecedented attack on the world's energy supply. There is no evidence the attacks came from Yemen. We call on all nations to publicly and unequivocally condemn Iran's attacks. The United States will work with our partners and allies to ensure that energy markets remain well supplied and Iran is held accountable for its aggression. What do you make? You're a general of the Air Force. What do you make of like the sci-fi type of use of 10 drones for a coordinated attack by drones on these oil fields?
Well, what we learned actually right at the beginning of World War II is that it's very difficult to prevent an air attack. You actually have to go to the origin of that attack and take those capabilities out. The problem with drones, they're widely proliferated now, and they can come from nearly anywhere. So it requires to have a much more, fulsome security capability in terms of, finding out what's going on, of course, cutting off access to funds and cutting off access to technology. The other thing that the United States could do is invest in some refining capability and transition of natural gas to liquid here in the United States as a buffer for the energy markets, but this is going to go on for a long time. We're going to have to continue to put pressure on Iran, put pressure on China, put pressure on Russia to stop funding and allowing technology to flow through that cause these kinds of challenges, but it's not going away anytime soon, and we're going to have to get better at understanding how drones are used. Not just in the Middle East. They were used in London to actually shut down an airport there. They could be used here in the United States. And quite frankly, our Cold War era missile technology control regime is not suited to the widely proliferated technology landscape that we have today.
Yeah, talk about that for a second, about the fact that, drones are so common. We saw Israel shoot down a drone that was flown over from Syria. And this is not the buzz bombs that were targeting London, where they could potentially go and bomb the launch sites. I mean, almost anyone can go get drones and somehow try and attack a target.
That's absolutely correct. And right now, China dominates the market for drones. And, missile technology control regime was, deployed in an era when we wouldn't allow the Soviet Union even to import American toys so they could get the chips for their weapon system. Right now, China has access to everything. So the way that you prevent a proliferation of technology that you don't want is to dominate that market. So if the United States were to, say, dominate the drone market, then they could ensure technology that prevented those drones from being used in ways that were counter to our principles. There could be a kill switch, for example. But right now, we're playing with our policies with really Cold War policies in a globalized, internet-powered world.
Yeah, man, that is frightening. Drone warfare is here. General Spalding of the United States Air Force, thank you for your insight and your warnings. And, of course, thank you for your service.